I'm going to start. All right, so it's recording.
All right, I'm just going to drop a link to my slides. Under each slide, I linked a article or some like reference to whatever stat I was talking about. All right.
Awesome.
Oops. Move this over.
Okay.
All right. So hi guys.
So this is this.
Oh.
Yeah. Welcome to our planet-wide SOS Hackathon webinar. So we have today Eesha Ulhak. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Yes, hi Eesha. So Eesha is a 17-year-old blockchain and machine learning developer. So she's passionate about improving government infrastructure and civil registration. She's built dApps for birth registration and is currently working on Unidem.tech, an ID storage vault using blockchain and biometrics. She consulted for companies like Interac, Sidewalk Labs, and Kidogo, and she also was speaking for the companies like Microsoft Source Group and Procter and Gamble, and in front of the audience over 2,000 people. So this is not new for you, Eesha, right? She's also a student at the Human Accelerator program for youth, exploring exponential technology called the Knowledge Society, which is our partner for this event. Welcome, Eesha. It's all yours now.
Thank you for that intro. Like Elena mentioned, my name is Eesha. I'm 17. I only got started in blockchain last year, and now I'm working with machine learning and deep learning. So I'm a part of a program called the Knowledge Society. Like Elena mentioned, it's a youth innovation program for high schoolers 13 to 17. They're in all these cities. So if you know anyone who might be interested, feel free to share it with them. And the whole basis of the program is exploring exponential tech to solve some of the world's biggest problems. So for me, the one problem that I'm really passionate about solving is the global identity crisis. So right now, over 1.1 billion people, according to the United Nations, can't legally prove they exist. To me, that's insane. So I'm in the Toronto program of the Knowledge Society, but I wasn't born there. I was born in Pakistan. And Pakistan is notorious for having not the best civil registration systems. So when I was born, I got a piece of paper, a birth certificate. And this piece of paper literally ratified my existence. It made me visible under the law and unlocked my human rights. But this is a piece of paper that over 68% of kids in Pakistan never receive. And what's scary is Pakistan isn't the worst. There's some countries with numbers as little as 4% registered. And what's even scarier is these numbers could be even smaller, given the fact that we don't even have that much data on them. We're ignoring such a huge part of our population, and we can't build things like proper government infrastructure if we're ignoring such a huge part of the population. And this document, a birth certificate, is massive for your life. It's a breeder document. It allows you to get other documents down the line. So for example, you can't get a passport majority of the time without a birth certificate. It's very difficult for a lot of students to enroll in public education without any way to prove their age. It's also really hard to get access to governmental services like medical services. And it's really hard to open up a bank account without any form of legal identification. So huge problems. A small thing like not getting your birth certificate or not being registered as a kid can impact the trajectory of your life. It prevents you from voting and doing a bunch of other things down the line. And what's scary is 1 in every 4th child under the age of 5 is unregistered. That means they're vulnerable because they're invisible. They're vulnerable to child marriage, conscription, child labor. It's very, very scary for these children. And what's scary is even if you have a birth certificate, it's likely a physical birth certificate, and it's prone to getting lost, stolen, or degraded because of natural disaster. And this problem is really prevalent among populations that are homeless or refugees. A lot of the time, people don't have enough time to get their documents before they flee. If you're homeless and you're moving place to place, it's very, very difficult to maintain certain documents. So the answer must be digital identity. But the problem with digital identity systems is, one, security. What if this system gets hacked, I mean, it's one of your most precious it's your most precious data. It's you. What about corruption within governments? What if someone tries to tamper with your documents or even data ownership? Majority of the time, this data belongs to some government or third party entity. What if we just owned our data? And that's what gets me really excited, is because with blockchain, we can. I'm assuming most of you have a high level understanding of blockchain, but blockchains are immutable, meaning they're tamper proof. They can't be changed with. They're transparent in many cases, not all. And we're able to audit through histories of transactions. It's secure. It's very, very hard to hack, and it's always backed up, and it's decentralized. So a centralized network is one where there's one node in the middle and a bunch connecting to it. The problem with these types of networks is they're very vulnerable to attacks with only one point of failure. Whereas a blockchain is a decentralized network. So there's a bunch of nodes and they're all interconnected. This system is much less vulnerable to attack because it needs multiple points of failure. Another really cool feature of blockchains, before I get into that, there's also, each of these nodes also has a ledger. And this is a ledger of records. And every time a node adds something to this ledger, it's immutable. Again, it can't be changed or forged. And all the nodes have a consistent copy of this ledger. Another really cool feature of blockchains is smart contracts. So smart contracts are just self-executing code on top of the blockchain. One of the most popular platforms that you guys might be familiar with is Ethereum, for deploying and creating these smart contracts. If you think of Bitcoin like an app, Ethereum is more like an app store. It helps you create different applications, and it serves as one common blockchain. What's really cool about smart contracts, like I said before, is they're self-executing, and that means that you don't need to rely on some third party or intermediary, and that's really cool. So I made a birth registration app using smart contracts on Ethereum on the Ropstein test network. So the test network isn't actually the main net. It's just a place for developers to play around with code without having any real ether at risk. So in this app, my vision was just the government would register a child, fill in some basic information that would be on a birth certificate. And then from there, it would officially be on the blockchain, immutable, tamper-proof. And then the government would transfer the birth certificate to your account. And from there, you'd have full ownership of it, and it wouldn't be in the government's account at all. This is really cool, but it is just like a little dApp I made. It doesn't really have much purpose because it's not tied to an actual government. But just last year in 2019, we recorded the first baby on the blockchain in Brazil, in a project by IBM, which is really cool, which means that governments are slowly starting to see that this could be an actual thing. Another big identity project was Building Blocks project in 2017 by the World Food Program. For context, the World Food Program is a charitable organization, and they're known for giving out food donations. But recently, they've been shifting to giving out monetary donations, so more like in-cash donations, because it saves them money when it comes to transportation and storage, and it gives like the customers more, the people more of an ability to choose what food they want. But the problem with monetary donations is a lot of the local banks that they exchange the money with, they charge transaction fees, and this ended up causing the World Food Program to lose 30% of its donations, so over $1 billion in just transaction fees. So they started creating a program called the Building Blocks program, and it was a pilot in a Jordanian refugee camp, and it used biometrics and blockchain to basically allow refugees, give them a wallet, so whenever they went to purchase food, it would be a constant record, and it also helped them build a financial history. So like I said before, being a refugee, it's very hard to prove your identity, but also your financial records, given that it's likely wiped. So that was a really big step. Another global movement we're seeing is ID 2020. So this is a partnership with public and private sectors like Microsoft and Accenture, and also the United Nations. And the framework they built for identification was an ID, a digital ID needs to be private, portable, persistent, and personal. And these are all features that a blockchain has. One, private, just by the nature of public and private keys; portable, just because it's digital; persistent, all the nodes on the network have a consistent copy of the ledger; and it's also personal in the cases of biometrics, but also your your personal and private keys. So I just covered birth registration, but another huge sector of civil registration is property registration. Right now, 70% of people can't prove prove their claims over their land, which is insane. Because if you think about it, it's probably one of the biggest investments you'll ever make in your life. And someone can just come in and say, that's not your land. Without having any legal documents to prove your ownership to the land, that's a huge problem. And right now, over 1/3 of countries don't even digitally track land, which is scary. So your one of your most biggest assets is locked up somewhere in a filing cabinet. And it doesn't take a lot for an official or someone to go in and change some things up. And we've seen this before, where a lot of corrupt politicians might go in and change land titles. So huge problem. In places like Brazil, there's not a centralized land registry identity either. There's a bunch of agents that manage local regions. But the problem with these agents is they lack a lot of coordination. And what ends up happening is there's dozens and dozens of houses that have multiple land titles because of the severe lack of coordination. So you have one land with a bunch of different owners. So that's a huge problem in Brazil. Not only is it a problem in certain countries, but it's a global problem. So if you're struggling financially, you can't even take out a loan against your house as collateral. And this has caused us around $10 trillion of dead capital, of people not being able to take out loans, according to Hernando de Soto, who's one of the world's leading economists. But things are changing. So a company named Exxon was one of the first projects that actually registered land on the blockchain, I believe in 2017, and in the Republic of Georgia. And as of 2018, they had over 1.5 million properties registered. And they cut the time that it took to register a property from 1 day to 10 minutes, which is insane for efficiency. And they also saved a bunch of money when it comes to costs. Another project is called Bitland in Ghana. For context, Ghana also has a really big land registration problem. And Bitland was working in 28 different communities within Ghana to register land using coordinates, so specific geographical coordinates. So I just mentioned property registration and birth registration, but there's a bunch of other things that blockchain can be used for when it comes to civil registration or general registration. Medical records, a huge problem. When you travel to different countries, it's very hard for doctors to have a consistent record. Vehicle registration, wills and testaments, and also marriage certificates, a huge problem. Another thing that we're seeing recently is the shift in a lot of people not trusting their governments when it comes to voting. The American election coming up in 2020, we know that because of the current COVID crisis, not a lot of people are going to be voting because polling stations will be really crowded. So a lot of people are thinking, is there any way we can do this digitally? But then we run into the same issues of how do we do this securely? How do we protect people's identities? And how, most importantly, tying back to security, how do we not get this hacked? We've already seen in the last election so many headlines of potential fraud or scandals when it comes to hacking. So another huge area, especially given the COVID crisis. Another big area is genomic data. So now a lot of us are able to get our genome sequenced, and this is great for scientists and researchers because they can make medications specific to our genomes. The problem is a lot of the genome data that researchers have are from specific demographics, so specifically Caucasians, and a lot of other demographics aren't represented. The problem with this is when it comes to your genomic data, the medications that are made are based for those people of the specific demographic, and people who don't fit on those demographic might react negatively with the specific medications. So the solution is just getting more people's genomics data. But the problem is your genomic data is literally you. It's everything about you. And people can start biological warfare or target certain ethnicities, which is a huge problem. So a girl in the program in TKS, and also in CryptoChicks, her name's Ananya, she created a project called the Genome Project. And basically what it allowed people to do was to upload their genomic data in exchange for anonymously, in exchange for incentives from researchers. The project later got acquired by Consensus. So really cool stuff. Another project that a TKS student was working on is OpenMed. So similar to Genome, this project was more so in general for medical records. So people could put up their past medical histories. And again, researchers could purchase their medical histories anonymously. So a lot of crazy stuff happening and a lot of things were moving, but there's a lot of obstacles when it comes to using blockchain for such global registration systems. One is just government involvement. If you want to do something like civil registration where you need mass coordination of a bunch of people, at some point you're going to have to get the government involved. And a lot of governments don't want to lose control to decentralized powers or not have full control over their systems. Another problem is the Oracle problem. So we know just by nature of the blockchain that once the data is on the chain, it's permanent. It can't be tampered with. But a really big problem is, how do we know the data that we're putting on the blockchain in the first place is correct? So for example, there's a project in Brazil that was a property registration project. They ended up putting multiple false properties onto the blockchain. Although it was a pilot, if that played out in real life, that could have huge consequences. Another problem is just general awareness of the technology. While I was making this presentation, at first I wrote accessibility of technology, but in actuality, a lot of third world countries do have access to basic cell phones. But the awareness for things like blockchain is very, very low. So I think that's just a problem that one day will get fixed over time as blockchain becomes more known. But things are changing. So Dubai is starting a project called Smart City, and they plan on having 99% of their government applicable documents on the blockchain. Given the current COVID crisis, I think that's not going as planned, but still a huge step by Dubai. One of the world's leading digital countries is Estonia. They were the first country in 2012 to actually put blockchain systems in production using KSI, so keyless signature infrastructure. So when we talk about blockchain, most of the time we talk about public key and private key infrastructure. Keyless signature infrastructure has no private key and no public keys. It's just hash data. Estonia is also one of the most digital countries in the world, with 99% of their government services online. So that's a huge win for blockchain. And I think as we have more and more countries slowly getting involved, and we have more and more projects like CryptoChicks doing hackathons, I think it's really important that we just create the future we want to see. And I think there's a lot of very, very smart people in the blockchain and AI space who are working on a lot of cute projects, but they forget that they have the ability to impact billions with technology. And that's why I'm really excited for what you guys create throughout this hackathon, because it's tackling real world issues. And feel free to reach out afterwards if you have any questions. For those of you that just joined, I linked an article or some context for all the facts I mentioned throughout the presentation.
Thank you, Eesha. Thank you so much. So yeah, you mentioned that Dubai is building a smart city tomorrow. We have actually the lots of people from Dubai coming to our hackathon at 11 a.m. Toronto time. So we will have to introduce them to the whole hackathon procedures. And so I'm looking forward what they actually going to have to bring to our hackathon. And also my question to you is, you built like your applications on the blockchain as well, right? So you kind of like you coded them, so you know them inside out, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so when I started out, what I did was I ended up just replicating certain projects. And I started learning more about like tweaking them and like building out my own code. So starting off, I didn't just like go straight into blockchain. It was a lot of just watching tutorials, replicating, and then getting into the hang of it. Yeah.
So that's what we have, and that's what our participants need help with, probably the technical stuff. And if you would like to sign up to our hackathon as a mentor, it's going to be huge help for some of the people because they are just starting in developing in the blockchain. And same for our CryptoChicks hatchery that we have. So we have lots of projects that right now developing their MVPs and need also help with the technical stuff. So I'm inviting you to join. Everybody, I just unmuted you. No, I just allowed you to unmute your microphone. So if you have any questions to Eesha, please go ahead and ask. Or you can also type it in a chat if you would like to. And today we also, if you would like to present any of your hackathon ideas, so we record it and publish it on our webpage so others can see. Please do so as well. You can unmute your microphone and go ahead with the presentations. All right, I think we don't have any more check. Like, let me see if I actually allowed people to unmute microphone. If you cannot unmute your microphone, let me know in the chat, because I think I just allowed you to do it. No, I didn't allow you. I'm so sorry. Yes, you can unmute your microphones now if you'd like to do so.
Hi, my name is Juliana, and quick question here. Could you please describe and quickly list out the main issue of blockchain, which we face right now? So from financial point of view till technical, like some so description of the highest level of issue, please.
So I think the Oracle problem, like I mentioned before, making sure the data we're putting on chain is a very big problem. Another really big problem is just general infrastructure when it comes to block sizes. So we have different chains of blockchains, which have different block sizes. So how many transactions they can do per second. Some are more scalable than others, but it also is like a matter of which one has the most users. So a huge thing is, so one might be more scalable, but how many users does it have? And getting more people to switch is a really big problem. I think it's also I think infrastructure is there for certain blockchains, but there's also a big problem of cross-chain like interoperability. So there's a lot of interesting blockchains, but you don't see like a lot of projects like cross-collabing, which is, in my opinion, I think it's a really big problem.
Yeah, it's also that's a no unification rule to scale over. I agree with you absolutely. Thank you very much.
Eesha, what is your take on storing the private information on the blockchain?
I think a lot of times when it comes to very personal information, like the information I just mentioned throughout, most people will think, oh, let's put it on a private blockchain instead of like a public blockchain. But the problem is we already have so many different like pilots and projects that are on public blockchains. But again, like there's not much like cross collaboration. So I think we need to see more people putting trust in public blockchains, and also just taking care of like their private key. I think that's like a huge thing. But just finding more private blockchain projects going public, I think is a really big thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because the value of a blockchain is actually in the public blockchain, so that everybody can kind of like see the records, so the records are immutable, and also transparent. But yes, so right now, I think there are technologies emerging to store this information on a public blockchain safely. Like for example, we will have one of our keynote speaker, Paul Brody from Ernst & Young, talking about storing such information using a Nightfall that Ernst & Young developed. This such technology, like zero proof technologies, they allow us to store like private records and do the private transactions on a public blockchain safely.
Yeah,
So
really excited for zero knowledge proofs in SNARK, because
Mhm.
I think that those hold like a huge potential. Yeah.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, so anyone else, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute your microphone. Thank you so much, Eesha, for presenting such a great topic for us, and we're waiting for you to join us as a mentor. Thank you so much. So guys, if you would like to present your ideas, as I said, I allowed you now to unmute your microphone. Please do so, and you can present your idea to the crowd. We record it and we publish it on our webpage for other hackers to see. All right, I don't see anyone wanted to present. So at this point, I think we are done. Thank you so much taking your time on Saturday, listening to our workshop webinar. We hope you enjoy our hackathon, and we will have more coming up. Please join our Discord. You can go to soshackathon.com and join our Discord from this website. You can also register to our hackathon there. Thank you very much and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.